I did the wrong thing. Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of the BONDCAST. We are at the penultimate episode of Series 1. And this episode is about none other than James Bond writer, Mr. Ian Fleming. Excuse me, my phone buzzed. It's nothing important. Okay, it's just a game. Who cares about games on their phones? Not me. Right. So we're going to talk about Ian Fleming. Sorry these videos have taken a little while to, come out. You were coming at you from one angle today just because of things going on at the moment, so you'll have to kind of put up with that. So don't worry, I will not look either way. That way. Or that way. It's so confusing because OBS flips everything. So I think this hand is on the opposite side on my screen, and this hand is really weird. Anyway, we're not here to talk about OBS and the weirdness of OBS. As great as it is, it took me so long to find something to use to record this. The video stuff for OBS. So, yeah, we're talking about the man that wrote James Bond in this episode. That is Mr. Ian Fleming, who wrote, I don't even know how many James Bond novels, and also Chitty Bang Bang. Was a tongue twister. Yeah. So. Let's get into it. And again, if you see my other videos, you'll kind of know why these have taken a little while to come out, and I do apologize for that. But yeah, let's get into it, shall we? So, Ian Fleming, with a middle name of Lancaster, Ian Lancaster Fleming, who was born on the 28th of May, 1908, and died on the 12th of August, 1964. He was 56 years old. He was a British writer, obviously, and naturally known for the James Bond series. It says here that Fleming came from a wealthy family connected to the merchant bank Robert Fleming and Co. I wonder if there's a bit of history, because we really want to delve into Ian Fleming today. Robert Fleming and Co., known as Flemings, was an asset manager merchant bank founded in Dundee, Scotland in 1873. In 1909, the firm moved its headquarters to London, England, where it was sold to Chase Manhattan Bank for over $7 billion in the year of 2000. Fleming's was a 50% partner in the Asian investment bank Jardine Fleming. So I don't know if it's got like a new name. Oh, sorry. Also, just apologies if you can hear meowing in the background. It's my cat. Yes. It's very. And Ian's father was a member of Parliament. He was an MP for Henley from 1910 until his death on the Western Front in 1917. Fleming was educated at Eton in Sandhurst, and briefly the universities of Munich and Geneva. Fleming moved through several jobs before he started writing. So whilst he was working for Britain's Naval Intelligence Division during the Second World War, Fleming was involved in planning Operation GoldenEye. Ooh. So there's a little bit of a connection to Bond already. So he planned something called Operation GoldenEye, and for you sort of avid Bond fans, you will know that GoldenEye is the name of one of the Bond films. And in the planning and oversight of 2 intelligence units, 30 Assault Unit and T-Force. He drew from his wartime service and his career as a journalist for much of the background, detail and depth of his James Bond novels. Kind of makes sense now, why they're like top-notch kind of films. I would love to get some of the books though. Fleming wrote his first Bond novel, Casino Royale, which stars Daniel Craig, which we'll find out at a later date, in 1952 at the age of 44. It was a success and 3 print runs were commissioned to meet the demand. 11 Bond novels and 2 collections of short stories followed between 1953 and 1966. The novels centre around James Bond, an officer in the Secret Intelligence Service, commonly known as the MI6. Bond is also known by his code number 007 and was a commander in the Royal Naval Volunteer Reserve. The Bond stories rank among the best-selling series of fictional books of all time, having sold over 100 million copies worldwide. Fleming also wrote the children's story Chitty Chitty Bang Bang in 1964. And 2 works of non-fiction. In 2008, The Times ranked Fleming 14th on its list of the 50 greatest British writers since 1945. Fleming had a wife, naturally, was married to Anne Charteris. She had divorced her husband, the 2nd Viscount Rothermere, because of her affair with the author. Fleming and Charteris had a son, Caspar. A heavy smoker and drinker for most of his life, Fleming died from complications of heart disease in 1964 at the age of 56. 2 of his James Bond books were published posthumously. Other writers have since produced Bond novels. Fleming's creation has appeared in film 27 times. 27! And that is the James Bond series that we've grown to love, that is like a British Institute, portrayed by 6 actors in the official film series. So, yeah. Ian Fleming's, he was born at 27 Green Street in the wealthy London district of Mayfair. His mother was Evelyn Eve Fleming, formerly Rose, and his father was Valentine Fleming, the Member of Parliament for Henley, between 1910 and 1917. As an infant, it says he briefly lived in Braziers Park in Oxfordshire. Fleming was a grandson of Scottish financier Robert Fleming, which we've covered, who founded Scottish American investment company, the merchant bank Robert Fleming & Co., or Flemings. So, we're really going to delve into Fleming and his history and a little bit around his family. So in 1914, with the start of the First World War, Valentine Fleming joined C Squadron of the Queen's Own Oxfordshire Hussars and rose to the rank of Major. He was killed by German shelling on the Western Front on the 20th of May 1917. Mr. Winston Churchill wrote an obituary for him that appeared in the Times. Because Valentine had owned an estate at Arnisdale, his death was commemorated in the Glenelg War Memorial. I think that's how you pronounce it. I might have butchered that. Oh, go away. I don't want random news. I want to read about Ian Fleming. That's what I'm here for. Go away. Thank you. Fleming's elder brother, Peter, became a travel writer and married actress Celia Johnson. He served with the Grenadier Guards during the Second World War and was later commissioned under Colin Gubbins to help establish the auxiliary unit and became involved in behind-the-lines operations in Norway and Greece during the war. What is your problem, Cat? Sorry. Can you be quiet? Please? No. No. Well, leave the room then. You're halfway out the door. Keep going. Keep going. I got a cat. She's not been spayed. I need to get a spade when I've got some money. I really do. Yeah, you sit there, be quiet. Anyway, wait. Oh yeah, okay. So yeah, his brother in Norway and Greece. Fleming also had two younger brothers, Richard and Michael, who also served in World War II. Richard served with Scottish Regiment, Lavaut Scouts, and Seaforth Highlanders. Apologies. And was the father of author James Fleming. Michael died of his wounds in October 1940 after being captured at Normandy while serving with the Oxfordshire and Buckinghamshire Light Infantry. Fleming also had a younger maternal half-sister born out of wedlock, the cellist Amaryllis Fleming. Again, I may have butchered that and I apologise. Born in 1925 and lived to 1999. His father was the artist of Augustus John. Amaryllis was conceived during a long-term affair between John and Evelyn, which had started in 1923, 6 years after the death of Valentine. Okay, so at least, okay, his daughter was, his half-sister was born out of wedlock, but I suppose, it'd been 6 years since Ian's father had died, which probably still isn't great, but, So let's go into his education. Because I think all of this, you as the listener might be sat there going, oh, none of this is relevant. Do you know what? It's what shapes somebody, and this is what, it's what inspires them to do what they do and how they come to those careers. So in 1914, Fleming attended Dumford School, not Dumford, Durnford. I look like Dumford, I haven't got my glasses on. A preparatory school on the Isle of Purebeck in Dorset. He did not enjoy his time at Durnford. He suffered unpalatable food, physical hardship, and bullying. Bro, nah, you can't. No, he's like the man that brought us James Bond. He's been bullied as a kid. This is just not on. In 1921, Fleming enrolled at Eton College. Not a high achiever academically, but he excelled at athletics and held the title of Victor Ludorum, winner of the games for 2 years between 1925 and 27. He also edited a school magazine, the Wyvern, I think that is. His lifestyle at Eton brought him into conflict with his housemate Evie Slater, who disapproved of Fleming's attitude, his hair oil, his ownership of a car, and his relations with women. So, just because, Fleming was, a little bit more upper class, this guy had a problem with him. Okay, Slater persuaded Fleming's mother to remove him from Eton a term early for a grammar course to gain entry to the Royal Military College in Sandhurst. He spent less than a year there, leaving in 1927 without gaining a commission after contracting gonorrhea. Lovely. Yeah, we don't want to know about that. In 1927, to prepare Fleming for possible entry into the Foreign Office, his mother sent him to the Tennerhof in Kitzbühel, Austria. Again, I'm probably butchering these, apologise. A small private school run by the Elderian disciple and former British spy Ernest Forbes Dennis, a novelist, and his novelist wife Phyllis Botome. After improving his language skills there, he studied briefly at Munich University and the University of Geneva. Whilst in Geneva, there's a lot mentioned in Geneva in James Bond, so... Or is that Doctor Who? Is that the unit that mentions Geneva? I'm not entirely sure. I might be getting my fandoms crossed over here. Don't shoot me. Whilst in Geneva, Fleming began a romantic relationship with Monique Panchaud de Martens. Again, I apologise if I butchered that. And the couple became engaged just before he returned to London in the September of 1931 to take his foreign office exam. He scored an adequate pass, woohoo, standard, but failed to get a job offer. Look, bro passed the exam, come on. Mind you, if he'd got the job, we might have never got James Bond and I would be sat here talking to you now. So let's keep going. His mother intervened in his affairs, lobbying Sir Roderick Jones, head of Reuters news agency, and in October of 1931 he was given a position as a sub-editor and journalist for the company. In April of 1933, Fleming spent time in Moscow, where he covered the... Hang on. Oh, a bit of ASMR there. Stalinist show trial of 6 engineers from the British company Metropolitan Vickers. That was an easy one. Generally known as the Metro Vickers affair. Again, that was easy. While there, he applied for an interview with Soviet Premier Joseph Stalin. Oh, I know. Okay. And was amazed to receive a personally signed note apologising for not being able to attend. Upon returning from Moscow, he ended the engagement to Monique after his mother threatened to cut off his trust fund allowance. Wow, so I can see, so bear in mind at this point it's like early 30s. My guess is his mum didn't approve of Monique, perhaps, and from what I can see, he was like, oh, you don't get your money if you stay with Monique. That's kind of what it looks like. Yes, Enzo, yes, I agree. Yes, horrible, isn't it? Yeah, alright, can you leave? It's very distracting. Shut up, cat! Come here! Come here! The problem I have. She'll walk round, she'll be noisy, and you ask her to come to you so you can fuss her and calm her down, and she won't. Enzo! Nope, okay, let's carry on. Fleming bowed to family pressure again in October of 1933 and went into banking with a position at the Finances Colt & Co. Bro, never bow to peer or family pressure. Ian Fleming, if you were alive in this day and age, you'd realise nobody does peer pressure anymore. People can try, but it don't work. But also, you know, like, things were a lot different back then. You know. Anyway, in 1935, he moved to Rowe and Pittman on Bishopgate as a stockbroker. Fleming was unsuccessful in both roles. The same year, Fleming met Muriel Wright while skiing in Austria. I'm not going to say it's the same place as earlier, I'm just going to say Austria. And began a long-term relationship with her. After her death during a World War II bombing raid in London in 1944, Fleming was overcome with guilt and remorse, and it is generally thought that she provided the inspiration for the women he was to create for his future novels. Early in 1939, Fleming began an affair with Anne O'Neill, formerly known as Charteris, who was married to the third Baron O'Neill. She was also having an affair with Esmond Harmsworth, the heir to Lord Rothermere, owner of the Daily Mail. Wow, woman was seeing so many men. Okay, so then we get on to Fleming in the Second World War, which, as we read at the beginning, this is where his inspiration for James Bond kind of came into it. So in May of 1939, Fleming was recruited by Rear Admiral John Godfrey, Director of Naval Intelligence of the Royal Navy, to become his personal assistant. He joined the organisation full-time in August of 1939 with the codename 17F and worked out of a room 39 at the Admiralty. Admiralty? Yeah. Anyway, Fleming's biographer, Andrew Lycett, notes that Fleming had no obvious qualifications for the role. As part of his appointment, Fleming was commissioned into the Royal Naval Volunteer Reserve in July of 1939. Initially as a lieutenant, but was promoted to lieutenant commander a few months later. Fleming proved invaluable as Godfrey's personal assistant and excelled in administration. Godfrey was known as an abrasive character who made enemies within government circles. He frequently used Fleming as a liaison with other sections of the government's wartime administration, such as the Secret Intelligence Service, the Political Warfare Executive, the Special Operations Executive, the SOE, and the Joint Intelligence Committee and the Prime Minister's staff. On the 29th of September of 1939, soon after the start of the war, Godfrey circulated a memorandum that bore all the hallmarks of Lieutenant Commander Ian Fleming. According to historian Ben McIntyre, it was called the Trout Memo and compared the deception of an enemy wartime to fly fishing. The memo contained several schemes to be considered for use against the Axis powers to lure U-boats and German surface ships towards minefields. Number 28 on the list was an idea to plant misleading papers on a corpse that would be found by the enemy. The suggestion is similar to Operation Mincemeat in 1943 to conceal the intended invasion of Italy from North Africa, which was developed by Charles Cholmondeley in October 1942. The recommendation in the Trout Memo was titled A Suggestion, Not a Very Nice One, and continued. The following suggestion is used in a book by Basil Thompson. A corpse dressed as an airman with dispatches in his pockets could be dropped on the coast, supposedly from a parachute that has failed. I understand there is no difficulty in obtaining corpses at the Naval Hospital, but of course it would have to be a fresh one. Wow, this is really deep stuff. They were going to steal a corpse, a fresh corpse. Okay, let's continue. This is very dark. In 1940, Fleming and Godfrey contacted Kenneth Mason, Professor of Geography at Oxford University, about the preparation of reports on the geography of countries involved in military operations. These reports were the precursors of the Naval Intelligence Division Geographical Handbook series produced between 1941 and 1946. It's a long title. Operation Ruthless, a plan aimed at obtaining details of the Enigma codes used by the German Navy, was instigated by a memo written by Fleming to Godfrey on the 12th of September 1940. The idea was to obtain a Nazi bomber, man it with a German-speaking crew dressed in Luftwaffe uniforms to crash it into the English Channel. The crew would then attack their German rescuers and bring their boat and Enigma machine back to England. Much to the annoyance of Alan Turing and Peter Twin at Bletchley Park, the mission was never carried out. According to Fleming's niece, Lucy, an official of the Royal Air Force pointed out that if they were to drop a drowned Heinkel bomber in the English Channel, it would probably sink rather quickly. Ew, got a point. Alan Turing, wasn't he the man that did the computer? Because they were working from Bletchley Park, weren't they? Yeah, computers. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I saw a film about him. See, it's all very relevant. Okay. Fleming also worked with Colonel Wild Bill, and I should say it's Wild Bill Donovan, President Franklin D. Roosevelt's special representative on intelligence cooperation between London and Washington. In May of 1941, Fleming accompanied Godfrey to the United States, where he assisted in writing a blueprint for the Office of the Coordinator of Information, the department that turned into the Office of Strategic Services and eventually became the CIA. Phew, that's a mouthful. Admiral Godfrey put Fleming in charge of Operation GoldenEye, again. This is a Bond tie straight away. Between 1941 and 42, GoldenEye was a plan to maintain an intelligence framework in Spain in the event of a German takeover of the territory. Fleming's plan involved maintaining communication with Gibraltar and launching sabotage operations against the Nazis. In 1941, he liaised with Donovan over American involvement in a measure intended to ensure the Germans did not dominate the seaways. So, let's look at the 30 Assault Unit. In 1942, Fleming formed a unit of commandos known as Number 30 Commando or 30 Assault Unit, 30AU, composed of specialist intelligence troops. 30AU's job was to be near the front line of an advance, sometimes in front of it, to seize enemy documents from previously targeted headquarters. The unit was based on a German group headed by Otto Skorzeny, who had undertaken similar activities in the Battle of Crete in May 1941. The German unit was thought by Fleming to be one of the most outstanding innovations in German intelligence. Fleming did not fight in the field with the unit, but selected targets and directed operations from the rear. On its formation, the unit was 30 strong, but it grew to 5 times that size. That's 3, 6, 9, 12. That's 150 people. Wow. Okay. The unit was filled with men from other commando units and trained in unarmed combat, safe cracking, and lock picking at SOE facilities. In late of 1942, Captain, later Rear Admiral Edmund Rushbrook, replaced Godfrey as head of the Naval Intelligence Division, and Fleming's influence in the organization declined, although he retained control over 30AU. Fleming was unpopular with the unit's members, who disliked his referring to them as his Red Indians. Yeah, I can kind of see, especially if they were like British or something. I see the problem with that. Before the 1944 Normandy landings, most of 30AU's operations were in the Mediterranean, although it is possible that it secretly participated in the Dieppe raid, in a failed pinch raid for an Enigma machine and related materials. Fleming observed the raid from HMS Fernie 700 yards offshore. Because of its successes in Sicily and Italy, 30AU became greatly trusted by naval intelligence. In March of 1944, Fleming oversaw the distribution of the intelligence to Royal Navy units in preparation for Operation Overlord. He was replaced as head of 30AU on the 6th of June 1944, but maintained some involvement. He visited 30AU in the field during and after Overlord, especially following an attack on Cherbourg, for which he was concerned that the unit had been incorrectly used as a regular commando force rather than an intelligence gathering unit. This wasted the men's specialist skills, risked their safety on operations that did not justify the use of such skilled operatives, and threatened the vital gathering of intelligence. Afterwards, the management of these units was revised. He also followed the unit into Germany after it located in Tambach Castle, the German naval archives from 1870. In December of 1944, Fleming was posted on an intelligence fact-finding trip to the Far East on behalf of the Director of Naval Intelligence. Much of the trip was spent identifying opportunities for 30AU in the Pacific. The unit saw little action because of the Japanese surrender. So now we're going to look at T-Force, but just off to the side of T-Force is what is known as GoldenEye. So, okay, I'm just gonna that's called the GoldenEye Estate. That might be worth noting. Oh, I've just closed it off. Bear with me. I pressed the wrong button. Yes, I knew you're there. Alright. It's a good job I know where I got to, isn't it? T-Force! The 6-6... Rewind. T-Force! The success of 30AU led to the August 1944 decision to establish a target force, which, as I would have said naturally, and it's written here, became known as T-Force. The official memorandum held at the National Archives in London describes the unit's primary role, T-Force equals target force, to guard and secure documents, persons, equipment with combat and intelligence personnel after capture of large towns, ports, etc. in liberated and enemy territory. So, Fleming sat on the committee that selected the targets for the T-Force unit and listed them in the Black Books that were issued to the unit's officers. The infantry component of T-Force was in part made up of the 5th Battalion King's Regiment, which supported the 2nd Army. It was responsible for securing targets of interest for the British military, including nuclear laboratories, gas research centres, and individual rocket scientists. The unit's most notable discoveries came during the advance on the German port of Kiel, in the research centre for German engines used in the V-2 rocket Messerschmitt May 163, fighters and high-speed U-boats. Fleming later used elements of the activities of T-Force in his writing, particularly in his 1955 Bond novel, Moonraker. See, it's all linked, it's all relevant. You know, you'd have missed this. You wouldn't have known about his ties to James Bond from the war if I had not read all of this. You're welcome. So yes, please continue to listen. In 1942, Fleming attended an Anglo-American intelligence summit in Jamaica. But Jamaica comes up a lot in Bond. Maybe he likes Jamaica as well. Despite the constant heavy rain during his visit, he decided to live on the island once the war was over. His friend Ivar Bryce helped him find a plot of land in St. Mary Parish, where in 1945 Fleming had a house built, which was named Goldeneye. So that's the Goldeneye estate that I'm going to put in just a moment. His main residence remained in London in Victoria. The name of the house and estate where he wrote his novels has many possible sources. Fleming himself mentioned both his wartime Operation Goldeneye and Carson McCullers' 1941 novel Reflection in a Goldeneye, which described the use of British naval bases in the Caribbean by the American Navy. Fleming was demobilized in May 1945 but remained on the RNVR for several years, receiving a promotion to substantive lieutenant commander, special branch, on the 26th of July 1947. In October of 1947, he was awarded the King Christian X's Liberty Medal for his contribution in assisting Danish officers escaping from Denmark to Britain during the occupation of Denmark. He ended his service on the 16th of August 1952 when he was removed from the active list of the RNVR with the rank of Lieutenant Commander. So that's Ian Fleming's time in the war and the sort of the early links to James Bond right there. Excuse me, madam. Get out. Shut up. Whatever. Come on. Excuse me. Are you going? You going? You are now. I didn't hurt the guys, don't I? Just close the door. Okay. Meow! Yeah, she'll wander off now. For a bit. Anyway, post-war. About Mr. Ian Fleming. Upon Fleming's demobilization in May of 1945, he became the foreign manager in the Kemsley newspaper group, which at the time owned the Sunday Times. In this role, he oversaw the paper's worldwide network of correspondence. His contracts allowed him to take 3 months holiday every winter, which he took in Jamaica. I can't blame him. Yeah, you get 3 months holiday and you've got a house in Jamaica. Why not? Fleming worked full-time for the paper until December 1959, but continued to write articles and attend the Tuesday weekly meetings until at least 1961. After Anne Charteris's first husband died in the war, she expected to marry Fleming, but he decided to remain a bachelor. Okay, I can kind of see James Bond is a little bit kind of modelled on Ian Fleming himself. On the 28th of June 1945, she married 2nd Viscount Rothermere. Nevertheless, Charteris continued her affair with Fleming, travelling to Jamaica to see him under the pretext of visiting his friend and neighbour Noel Coward. In 1948, she gave birth to Fleming's daughter Mary, who was stillborn. Rothermere divorced Charteris in 1951 because of her relationship with Fleming, and the couple married on the 24th of March 1952 in Jamaica, a few months before their son Caspar was born in August. Both Fleming and Anne had affairs during their marriage. She with Hugh Gaitskell, the leader of the Labour Party and leader of the opposition. Fleming had a long-term affair in Jamaica with one of his neighbours, Blanche Blackwell, the mother of Chris Blackwell of Island Records. Fleming was also friends with British Prime Minister Anthony Eden, whom he allowed to stay at GoldenEye in late November 1953 due to Eden's deteriorating health. Bro's just like, yeah, I'll let the Prime Minister come and stay. Because we know he's got a wealthy background. Is what we know about him so far. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'd want the current Prime Minister or too many of the past Prime Ministers to come and stay with me. Definitely don't want Sir Keir Starmer here. But I'm not bringing politics into this. I just don't think I'd want him here, you know, Prime Minister or not. But I'm not bringing my politics into this. I remain apolitical in this podcast. Okay, so the 1950s. Fleming had first mentioned to his friends during the war that he wanted to write a spy novel. An ambition he achieved within 2 months with Casino Royale. He started writing the book at GoldenEye on the 15th of January 1952 and finished writing no later than the 16th of February 1952. Averaging more than 2,000 words per day, he claimed afterwards that he wrote the novel to distract himself from his forthcoming wedding to the pregnant Charteris, and called the work his dreadful oafish opus. His manuscript was typed in London by Joan Howe, mother of travel writer Rory MacLean, Fleming's red-haired secretary at the Times, on whom the character Miss Moneypenny was partially based. Interesting. Claire Blanchard, a former girlfriend, advised him not to publish the book, or at least to do so under a pseudonym. But then we wouldn't know, would we? Because there'd be a whole different history for Mr. Ian Fleming. During Casino Royale's final draft stages, Fleming allowed his friend William Plomer to see a copy and remarked, "So far as I can see, the element of suspense is completely absent." Despite this, Plomer thought the book had sufficient promise and sent a copy to the publishing house, Jonathan Cape. At first, they were unenthusiastic about the novel, but Fleming's brother Peter, whose books they managed, persuaded the company to publish it. On the 13th of April 1953, Casino Royale was released in the UK in hardcover, priced at 10s60. So let me just look at that, because this is old British money, isn't it? SD is the popular name for the pre-decimal currencies once common throughout Europe. The abbreviation originates from the Latin currency denominations from liberae, solidi, and denarii. So Fleming's book was 10 solidi and 6 denarii. Okay, very old. I mean, 1950s. That's 80 odd years ago. With a cover designed by Fleming, it was a success, and 3 print runs were needed to cope with the demand. So, the novel of Casino Royale centers on the exploits of James Bond, an officer of the Secret Intelligence Service, commonly known as the MI6. Bond is also known by his code number 007, and was a commander in the Royal Naval Reserve. Fleming took the name for his character from that of the American ornithologist James Bond, an expert on Caribbean birds and author of the definitive field guide Birds of the West Indies. So James Bond is not just a fictional name. The James Bond was a real person. He was someone that studied birds. That's cool. Fleming himself, a keen bird watcher, had a copy of Bond's guide and later told the ornithologist's wife that this brief, unromantic Anglo-Saxon and yet very masculine name was just what I needed, and so a second James Bond was born. In a 1962 interview in The New Yorker, he further explained, "When I wrote the first one in 1953, I wanted Bond to be an extremely dull, uninteresting man to whom things happened. I wanted him to be a blunt instrument. When I was casting around for a name, my protagonist, I thought, by God, James Bond is the dullest name I've ever heard." If only, Fleming knew the success that James Bond had today, and how it's the least dull franchise out there. Fleming based his creation on individuals he met during his time in the Naval Intelligence Division, and admitted that Bond was a compound of all the secret agents and commando types I met during the war. Among those types were his brother Peter, whom he worshipped, and who had been involved in behind-the-lines operations in Norway and Greece during the war. Fleming envisaged that Bond would resemble the composer, singer, and actor Hoagy Carmichael. Okay, yeah, I can see some Sean Connery resemblance a little bit there. Others, such as author and historian Ben McIntyre, identify aspects of Fleming's own looks in his description of Bond. General references in the novels describe Bond as having dark, rather cruel good looks. Told you! Some of Flair Bond was modelled on Fleming, didn't I? Anyway, Fleming also modelled aspects of Bond on Conrad O'Brien Ferenc, a spy whom Fleming had met while skiing in Austria in the 1930s. Patrick Dalzell Job, who served as a distinction in 30 AU during the war, and Bill Biffy Dunderdale, a station head of MI6 in Paris, who wore cufflinks and handmade suits and was chauffeured around Paris in a Rolls Royce. I'd love to be chauffeured around in a Rolls Royce. Come on, who wouldn't love to be chauffeured around in a Rolls Royce? Yeah, I think we all would. Sir Fitzroy MacLean was another possible model for Bond based on his wartime work behind enemy lines in the Balkans, as was the MI6 double agent Dusko Popov. Fleming also endowed Bond with many of his own traits. I told you, including the same golf handicap, his taste for scrambled eggs, his love of gambling, and use for the same brand of toiletries. I told you Bond was modelled partly on Fleming. And it's right there. After the publication of Casino Royale, Fleming used his annual holiday at his house in Jamaica to write another Bond story. 12 Bond novels and two short story collections were published between 1953 and 66. The last two, The Man with the Golden Gun and Octopussy and the Living Daylights, posthumously. Much of the background to the stories came from Fleming's previous work in the Naval Intelligence Division or from events he knew of from the Cold War. The plot of From Russia with Love, which is Series 2, which we'll be going into after the episode about Albert Broccoli. That's what we're going to be looking at, From Russia with Love. Uses a fictional Soviet Spectre decoding machine as a lure to trap Bond. The Spectre had its roots in the wartime German Enigma machine. The novel's plot device of spies on the Orient Express was based on the story of Eugene Karp, a US naval attaché and intelligence agent based in Budapest, who took the Orient Express from Budapest to Paris in February of 1950, carrying papers about blown US spy networks in the Eastern Bloc. Soviet assassins already on the train drugged the conductor, and Karp's body was found shortly afterwards in a railway tunnel of Salzburg. Many of the names used in the Bond works came from people Fleming knew. Scaramanga, the principal villain in The Man with the Golden Gun, was named after a fellow Eton schoolboy with whom Fleming had fought. Goldfinger, from the eponymous novel, was named after British architect Erno Goldfinger, whose work Fleming abhorred. And Sir Hugo Drax, the antagonist of Moonraker, was named after Fleming's acquaintance, Admiral Sir Reginald Almer Ranfurly, Plunkett, Ernol, Earl, Drax. That's a long name. Drax's assistant, Krebs, bears the same name as Hitler's last chief of staff and one of the homosexual villains from Diamonds Are Forever. Boofy Kid was named after one of Fleming's close friends and a relative of his wife, Arthur Gore, 8th Earl of Arran, known as Boofy to his friends. Fleming's first work of non-fiction, The Diamond Smugglers, was published in 1957 and was partially based on the background research for his fourth Bond novel, Diamonds Are Forever. Much of the material had appeared in the Sunday Times and was based on Fleming's interviews with John Collard, a member of the International Diamond Security Organization who had previously worked in the MI5. The book received mixed reviews in the UK and the US. For the first 5 books, which are Casino Royale, Live and Let Die, Moonraker, Diamonds Are Forever, From Russia with Love, Fleming received broadly positive reviews. That began to change in March of 1958 when Bernard Bergonzi in the journal 20th Century attacked Fleming's work as containing a strongly marked streak of voyeurism and sadomasochism, I think that's how you pronounce it, and wrote that the books showed the total lack of any ethical frame of reference. The article compared Fleming unfavorably with John Bouchan and Raymond Chandler on both moral and literary criteria. A month later, Dr. No was published, and Fleming received harsh criticism from reviewers who, in the words of Ben McIntyre, rounded on Fleming almost as a pack. The most strongly worded of the critiques came from Paul Johnston of the New Statesman, who in his review, Sex, Snobbery and Sadism, called the novel without doubt the nastiest book I have ever read. Johnson went on to say that by the time I was a third of the way through, I had to suppress a strong impulse to throw the thing away. Johnson recognised that in Bond there was a social phenomenon of some importance, but was seen as a negative element, as the phenomenon concerned 3 basic ingredients in Dr. No. All unhealthy, all thoroughly English. The sadism of a schoolboy bully, the mechanical two-dimensional sex longings of a frustrated adolescent, and the crude snob cravings of a suburban adult. Johnson saw no positives in Dr. No and said Mr. Fleming has no literary skill. The construction of the books is chaotic, and entire incidents and situations are inserted and then forgotten in a haphazard manner. Lysett notes that Fleming went into a personal and creative decline after marital problems and the attacks on his work. Goldfinger had been written before the publication of Dr. No. The next book Fleming produced after his criticism was For Your Eyes Only, a collection of short stories derived from outlines written for a television series that did not come to fruition. Lysett noted, as Fleming was writing the television scripts and the short stories, Ian's mood of weariness and self-doubt was beginning to affect his writing, which can be seen in Bond's thoughts. Well, that's not Fleming's fault. He was being criticised for something he'd spent years on. Guys, I'm just going to turn on the light, so bear with me because it's getting slightly dark. Yeah, I just thought we'd pause there to do that before we delve into the 1960s. But yeah, if you're going to attack somebody in such a way for their writing, they're going to feel that kind of rejection. Again, these men don't know what James Bond has become, I doubt. So, we now go to the 1960s. And then we'll look at his death. And we'll leave it at there for this week. There is a lot more on Fleming, so this might be perhaps a two-parter. And then we'll be on to... Yeah, I'm going to make it a two-parter. And then we'll go on to Albert Broccoli after that. So, in 1960, Fleming was commissioned by the Kuwait Oil Company to write a book on the country and its oil industry. The Kuwaiti government disapproved of the typescript State of Excitement Impressions of Kuwait, and it was never published. According to Fleming, the oil company expressed approval of the book, but felt it their duty to submit the typescript to members of the Kuwait government for their approval. The sheikhs, I think that's how you pronounce it, concerned found unpalatable certain mild comments and criticism, and particularly the passages referring to the adventurous past of the country, which now wishes to be civilized in every respect and forget its romantic origins. Fleming followed the disappointment of For Your Eyes Only with Thunderball, the novelization of a film script on which he had worked with others. The work had started in 1958 when Fleming's friend Ivor Bryce introduced him to a young Irish writer and director, Kevin McClory. And the three, together with Fleming and Bryce's friends Ernest Cuneo, worked on the script. In October, McClory introduced experienced screenwriter Jack Whittingham to the newly formed team, and by December of 1959, McClory and Whittingham sent Fleming a script. Fleming had been having second thoughts on McClory's involvement, and in January 1960 explained his intention of delivering the screenplay to the MCA, with a recommendation from him and Bryce that McClory act as a producer. He additionally told McClory that if MCA rejected the film because of McClory's involvement, then McClory should either sell himself to MCA, back out of the deal, or file a suit in court. Wow. So, working at GoldenEye between January and March 1960, Fleming wrote the novel Thunderball based on the screenplay written by himself, Whittingham, and McClory. In March of 1961, McClory read an advance copy, and he and Whittingham immediately petitioned the High Court in London for an injunction to stop publication. After two court actions, the second in November of 1961, Fleming offered McClory a deal, settling out of court. McClory gained the literary and film rights for the screenplay, while Fleming was given the rights to the novel, provided it was acknowledged as based on the screen treatment by Kevin McClory, Jack Whittingham, and the author. Fleming's books had sold well, but in 1961, sales increased dramatically. On the 17th of March 1961, 4 years after its publication and 3 years after the heavy criticism of Dr. No, an article in Life listed From Russia with Love as one of US President John F. Kennedy's 10 favorite books. Kennedy and Fleming had previously met in Washington. This accolade and the associated publicity led to a surge in sales that made Fleming the biggest-selling crime writer in the US. Fleming considered From Russia with Love to be his best novel. He said, "The great thing is that each one of the books seems to have been a favorite with one or other section in the public, and none has yet been completely damned." In the April of 1961, shortly before the second court case on Thunderball, Fleming had a heart attack during a regular weekly meeting at the Sunday Times. Whilst he was convalescing, one of his friends, Duff Dunbar, gave him a copy of Beatrix Potter's The Tale of Squirrel Nutkin and suggested that he take time to write up the bedtime story that Fleming used to tell to his son Caspar each evening. Fleming attacked the project with gusto and wrote to his publisher Michael Howard of Jonathan Cape, joking that "There is not a moment, even on the edge of the tomb, when I am not slaving for you." The result was Fleming's only children's novel, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, which was published in October of 1964, 2 months after his death. So now this is where we begin to see some things taking shape. In June of 1961, Fleming sold a six-month option on the film rights to his published and future James Bond novels and short stories to Harry Saltzman. Now we all know about Harry Saltzman. Perhaps I should cover him at some point. Saltzman formed the production vehicle EON Productions. Yes, I should cover Saltzman. Along with Albert R. Cubby Broccoli, who will be after the second part of Ian Fleming. Okay, so just going to pause there. So I'm going to do Ian Fleming Part 2. Then we're going to look at Albert R. Cubby Broccoli. That could be either 1 or 2 parts. And then Harry Saltzman. And that could be 1 or 2 parts. And then that'll be a wrap on Series 1. But we'll have to see as I go through and make these. And then after an extensive search, they hired none other than the first man to play James Bond on screen, Sean Connery, on a 6-film deal. Later reduced to 5, beginning with Dr. No. Connery's depiction of Bond affected the literary character. In You Only Live Twice, the first book written after Dr. No was released, Fleming gave Bond a sense of humour that was not present in the previous stories. Fleming's second non-fiction book was published in November of 1963. Thrilling Cities is called, a reprint of a series of Sunday Times articles based on Fleming's impressions of world cities in trips taken during 1959 and 1960. Approached in 1964 by producer Norman Felton to write a spy series for television, Fleming provided several ideas, including the names of characters Napoleon Solo and April Dancer for the series The Man from U.N.C.L.E. However, Fleming withdrew from the project following a request from EON Productions, who were keen to avoid any legal problems that might occur if the project overlapped with the Bond films. In January of 1964, Fleming went to GoldenEye for what proved to be his last holiday, and wrote the first draft of The Man with the Golden Gun. He was dissatisfied with it and wrote to William Plomer, the copy editor of his novels, asking for it to be rewritten. Fleming became increasingly unhappy with the book and considered rewriting it, but was dissuaded by Plomer, who considered it viable for publication. So that's the very beginning of the Bond films after you've got all the novels. So now we'll look at his death, and then we're going to leave it there this week, once I've read this. And we'll go into part 2 another time. So, Ian Fleming's death. Fleming was a heavy smoker and drinker throughout his adult life, and suffered from heart disease. In 1961, aged 53, he suffered a heart attack and struggled to recuperate. On the 11th of October 1964, while staying at a hotel in Canterbury, Fleming went to the Royal St George's Golf Club for lunch and later dined at his hotel with friends. The day had been tiring for him, and he collapsed with another heart attack shortly after the meal. Fleming died at age 56 at Kenton Canterbury Hospital in the early morning of the 12th of August 1964, his son Casper's 12th birthday. His last recorded words were an apology to the ambulance drivers for having inconvenienced them, saying, "I am so sorry to trouble you chaps. I don't know how you get along so fast with the traffic on the roads these days." Fleming was buried in the churchyard of Sevenhampton, near Swindon. His will was proved on the 4th of November, with his estate valued at £302,147, which in 2023 was equivalent to £7,733,951. Fleming's last two books, The Man with the Golden Gun and Octopussy and the Living Daylights, were published posthumously. The Man with the Golden Gun was published 8 months after Fleming's death and had not been through the full editing process by Fleming. As a result, the novel was thought by publishing company Jonathan Cape to be thin and feeble. The publishers had passed the manuscript to Kingsley Amis to read on holiday, but did not use his suggestions. Fleming's biographer, Henry Chandler, observes that the novel received polite and rather sad reviews, recognizing that the book had effectively been left half-finished, and as such did not represent Fleming at the top of his games. The final book, containing 2 short stories, Octopussy and the Living Daylights, was published in Britain on the 23rd of June 1966. In October 1957, Fleming's son Caspar died from a barbiturate overdose, which is excessive poisoning of the barbiturates. Symptoms typically include difficulty thinking, poor coordination, decreased level of consciousness, and a decreased effort to breathe. Complications of overdose can include other stuff. Well, it's very sad. At the age of 23. 1975, not 1957, I read that wrong. And was buried with his father. Fleming's widow, Anne, died in 1981 and was buried with her husband and their son. So that's Ian Fleming for you. Well, the first half of this. We're still going to look at his writing. There's a lot to get through, and then on to his legacy. So two big sections, and lots of subsections in the writing section to cover in the next episode of the BONDCAST, as we finish off talking about the very own Mr. Ian Fleming. But you've listened to me for... Well, this whole video is going to be just over an hour long, so I will not bore you anymore. But this will be Ian Fleming Part 1. And yeah, it's going to be part of Series 1. And I will see you all in the next video. Thanks for listening and watching. And I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.